I don't make money from making YouTube videos, I make my money from fixing bikes. And as a result of that, sometimes my videos are really long. And the reason they're really long is because I want to get across all of the details that you need in order to be able to do the job properly. Now, when I say properly, I mean to the level of where you could do that job in a professional workshop and someone would pay you money for it. A lot of people use the term like a pro or pro mechanic when they put up videos, but quite oftentimes they skimp over details that an actual professional would consider essential. I don't skimp over those details because I'm an actual professional and this is what I actually do. Sometimes these things take time. Like any skill that is worth learning, it's probably going to take a bit of effort. You're going to make mistakes and it's not going to happen immediately. However, you sit back, relax, grab a notepad, or ideally grab your bike that has the same issue and work through it with me. And at the end of this video, you probably won't be able to do it at the same speed, but you will have the basic understanding that you need to be able to do this job at a professional standard. And that is my goal with this video. It is still a pretty beautiful day here in Aberdeen, and I decided, well, I say decided, it was decided for me that I was going to do a brake service today because my brake pads have left the chat. They have decided they no longer want to play the game of life. So we have some new brake pads. We have a brake cable because it will make things better. We have those tiny little bits that no one can agree on what they're called, and a variety of tools. I'll show you the tools I have. Now, you may not need all of these, but you'll probably need most of these. Once you've put new pads in, you're probably going to need to adjust the lever arm position. So you need a screwdriver, either a flathead or a crosshead. You will need a pair of cable cutters to cut the old cable off. You might need a pair of flat stubby nose pliers in order to pull the cable through a bit harder. Definitely going to need a 5mm Allen key, or maybe a 4 or maybe a 6, depending on what pads you have. And this is a little pick to open up the end of the cable housing if I need to do that. You might not need to do that, but if you do, then it's very handy to have a little pick thing. And you will want some lubrications. This is just silicone lube, silicone lubricant. You can use like GT85. I'm not a big fan of WD-40 because it just cleans things. It doesn't then re-lubricate them. So things will be like clean and shiny, and they'll move well for like a little bit, but then because there's no actual lubricant in it, they will then seize up again very quickly. So silicone lube, or like GT85, has got a little bit of PTFE in it. It's really good stuff too. I like that. All right, let's crack on. So we are going to start with the front brake first. So I'm also going to pop on some gloves because I do this all the time, and if I don't wear gloves, then my hands look like they've been through the war. You can choose to or not to. I would advise you do. And I've got 2 left gloves, 2 right gloves. Never fear, I have more gloves. It's funny because I picked everything out for this video. I'm like, right, cool, I have everything. And I didn't consider the fact that I picked up the wrong set of fucking gloves. Oh well. Right, let's crack on. Front brake. So, I'm going to bring you, you know what? I'm going to bring this guy closer because bringing the camera closer is going to be a nightmare. Here we go. So, this is a V-brake style of brake. I really hope you guys can see this. This is what a V-brake looks like. It doesn't really look like a V right now, but if I pull the lever, then it kind of looks more like a V. It looks a little bit like that. That's why it's called a V-brake. Anyway, the pads need changed. I'm going to change the cable because the cable's freaking orange. Depending on how nice the previous mechanic has been, you may be able to see the inner cable, or you may not be able to see the outer cable. Inner cable, sorry. Now, some people, what they will do is they will pull the cable end off with a pair of flathead stubby nose pliers like this. Yo, I got that one good last time, didn't I? Hurt! That's really on there. There we go, it's off. Now, you only really need to do that if you're reusing the cable. I'm not going to reuse the cable. I am going to put new cable in it. But I want to show you that because if you go and pull this cable through and you still have the cable end on it, it won't go all the way through because it will obviously get caught. What is good practice to do, however, is if you cut the end of this off, typically it'll be a bit mashed. I say cut the end off. You're going to want to obviously release the cable first, usually a 4 or 5 mil Allen key. Some are different, but it's usually one of those two. Now, as I was saying a moment ago, once you then have the cable, you might be able to see this, but this is kind of a bit kinked. Now, if you pull that kink the whole way through this housing, it's going to kind of mess the housing up a little bit. So what I like to do is cut the gummed up bit off first, because I don't plan on replacing the housing. The housing on this brake is fine, but the inner definitely needs replaced. Now keep your precious bits, like this little rubber booty, in a place where you're not going to lose them. I don't know where that is for you, but you got to figure out what that is. Your treasure spot. Okay, so we've cut the cable. Now, very simply, we will pull the cable through the brake. Little tip if you're doing this that makes your life so much easier. Well, you can just pull the housing off, which makes life easy. Then, on most V-brakes, I'm going to show you this up close and personal, and hopefully I don't ruin my my frame. But here, you'll see there's a little slot there. If you rotate the other piece, this is really hard to do with one hand, and try to line up the, oh, where we go, there we go. Right, so you got a slot there and a slot there. Now if you go underneath, hopefully the sun doesn't fuck me on this, there's also a slot there. Not the easiest thing in the world to see with light, but there is a slot down here. Now if you line these two pieces up so the slots line up, and this lines up, then magic will happen. Let's see if I can do this with one hand. God, this will test my skill. Yoy, yoy, yoy. Right, we got that there. We got that there. Okay, now you're going to see the slot in action. Now, I can literally, there, see that? It just pulls through. Now, that means the cable will just pop out. Like so. Yada! I'm going to pop you back here. Okay. That's good. Now, reusing that slot I just showed you, I'm going to fit the new cable, and this time it's going to be really easy to fit the cable because you can use that slot. A lot of people don't know about that, or they forget, and it does make it a lot easier because sometimes the way manufacturers design these levers, they don't make it the easiest thing in the world to get them in. But there'll always be like a little circle bit thing here in the lever arm. Sometimes it's like on the end there and it's like this little dangly bit. Those dangly ones are going to be honest, they're a bit of a nightmare to work on, but this one's pretty solid. So I'm going to pop that in there, slide it along, put it along the little slit, and then crucially twist these so they don't line up anymore. And that means that will hold the cable in place. That honestly makes this so much easier. Now, there are controversial debates all over the internet on whether or not, I say controversial, I don't actually know if there is. You know, I've never Googled this, but I've talked to people and it seems like it's a controversial topic. Some people say if you put like a lubricant on the cable, then what will happen is it will degrade the plastic sheath inside the housing. Now, I'm going to be honest, I don't believe that. The reason I don't believe that is I don't believe the plastic will degrade quicker than the service interval on the brakes. That's just my opinion. Everybody's entitled to one of those. Some people don't. Some people religiously think it's stupid and that your brakes will explode and you'll die and the world will implode and all these ridiculous things. I don't believe that. I think if you put a little bit of lubricant on it, it's probably going to work. It'll definitely work better for at least the first couple of weeks, and to be honest, it might continue working better, or it might get really gummy. But that's the way I do it. I'm not saying it's perfect, but it works for me very well. All right, so we've got the new cable on. As I said before, I'm not going to replace the housing because the housing on this brake is fine. I'll probably do a video at some point when my housing is shitty and fails on how you do that. Because sometimes people cut it really long, is honestly the biggest issue. Well, you know what? Here is a point worth making. Inside this this boot, there's a little plastic piece like this. Now, in my experience, quite a lot of the time, that little plastic thing inside there can get quite gummy. And when it gets quite gummy, it means that the brake doesn't move very well. However, this front brake was moving fairly well before, so I'm not terribly worried that it's too gummed up. However, I'm still going to spray a little bit of silicone spray down there because that will help it move a little bit better. I'm now realizing, despite the fact I've come back from holiday and I wasn't expecting it to be this bloody warm, that a shirt was the wrong move today. Yoy, I am warm! Okay. So you get that on there, a little bit of spray, pull the cable through, like so. Now, this piece here, the end of this, the way that is designed to sit in the V-brake is exactly like, come on one hand, magic one hand wonder, like so, like that. And then the tension will hold it in place. So that's how it should look when it's in. I like to add these little details because I realize sometimes you get repair videos and people tend to just kind of skim over these points as though they're not important, when really they're actually very fucking important. And they're the things that will make your repair go so much more easily. Yoy, this is actually so hot. This is ridiculous. I'm warmer now than I was when I was on holiday in frickin' Africa. Bear with me. You can hang out there for a sec. Okay. That is infinitely better. We return to our scheduled programming now. Okay, so we have the cable in. Let's get, oh my god, that was hilarious. I was like, oh, make sure you put the little rubber booty in a place where it won't disappear. And I put it in a place where it wouldn't disappear, and it has ironically fucking disappeared. Oh no, it's cool. It has disappeared exactly where I need it, right there onto the cable. Okay, so now I'm gonna feed the cable back through the little bit, little cable pinch bolt bit. These are all a little bit different. Some of them are very intuitive and very simple to use. Some of them are a bit of a nightmare. There you go. That's the cable on. That is how you change a cable out on a V-brake. I'm also going to show you how to change the pads, because that's a really helpful thing to know. I don't know how well the camera will pick this up, but there's not a lot of pad left on these brakes. Oh, maybe get it better from here. Oh, we will get it better from there. That pad is very much left there, so we're going to replace that. I can go back up here on my magical stack of bricks. Okay. So some pads have a 6mm nut, 6mm bolt head thing on the back of them. Some have a 5. Quite often this is easier to do if you open the brake up. I will show you these pads in closer detail in a moment so you can see just quite how worn they are in comparison to some new pads. And I will also show you the order in which all of these mythical little washers are supposed to go. Because the amount of times that people bring their bikes into the shop and they've just done it wrong. frankly. So that's that pad off. And we have, come on, give me the new pad. Give it to me. Here we go. Okay. So as you can see, I'm going to come around the back so I know you guys can definitely see this. On the left, this is an old pad. On the right, this is a new pad. As you can see, there is a drastic difference between the amount of material on these. And this is probably why my brake was feeling so squishy. So like, to be honest, I've never really worn a pad down that much. I'm actually quite impressed with the amount of life I got out of those. That's good going. Okay, so that is rubbish. That's trash. Get the other one off. Now again, there are a great many ways to do this. I'm just showing you my way. You might have your own way. Plenty of other people have theirs. I'm not going to argue and tell you my way is the best. I don't even think it is. It's just a way that works. I've done this quite a lot of times, and this way seems to work very well for me. Now, some pads are unidirectional. You can put them on whatever hell way you want. This one, I don't know how well this will show up. Oh, that shows up pretty well. Obviously, you can see that is R for the right side, meaning rider's right, and the arrow points towards the front. If something says right on a bicycle, the general rule of thumb is that if you are seated on the bike, it is whatever your right hand would be. So in this case, that right is going to be this right, because it's the rider's right. So this pad's going to go on that side. Crucially now, I'm going to show you the order that these little gubbins go in, and why they go in that order. So as you can see here, there is the kind of base nut. You then have a little washer. It just kind of keeps things chill. You get a little washer. Let's go this way. Makes it a little bit easier to see. Washer, and then there's this kind of bigger spacer nut. In between, this is concave. There's like a little, you know what, let's go the other way, because that sunlight is amazing and beautiful, but also kind of unbearable to shoot in. That's better. Right, so we have this top cap piece here that can come off. Goes there. I'm just going to hold these bits, show you. So this big one is concave because it has, the way I remember it, concave because it's got a little cave inside basically. You then have a convex washer, which points out the way. That goes in like that, and this goes closest to the rim. Then what would go between here and the other set of concave and convex is the lever arm. So that goes on that side, and then the other pair, smaller pair, goes on the other side of the brake arm, going like that. Now the reason for that orientation is that if you have the concave and the convex one like that, then it works kind of like a knee joint, right? These can kind of move around, they can move over one another, and it means that you can adjust the position of the pad really efficiently, really effectively. If you mess up the order of these, then you'll probably find it quite difficult to get the position of your pad spot on. Not impossible, but it will be significantly more difficult. Okay. Now, I'm gonna be honest. This next part just takes practice and patience. What I like to do though is disengage the brake. The arms are open like this. Here you can kind of test and make sure the springs work. They do. I'm happy with that. Obviously this is the right side front facing that way. The reason I like to do it this way is because if you still have the brake under tension, it can be very difficult to get all those little bits in the right order. So what I do, to pop that on with just the big concave and one of the convex washers, I can then push this against the rim I kind of hold it like that. This is where the fidgetiness comes in. I then have my other concave and convex. They go on like that. Now this is the fun part, because I have everything there apart from the thing that holds it on. That goes on like so. And that'll be, I can nip that up in a minute. I'm not going to bore you through me doing the second one, or me attaching the second one. I will show you how more precisely how to get the position of these nailed. I will admit, if you have cheap rims and cheap pads, they'll probably squeak, and this will be more difficult. But if you have V-brakes that are like at least decent quality, then they won't be nearly as difficult to do. Okay, so I have both pads on the lever arms, and they are ready to be positioned. What I like to do before I do kind of like the more final adjustments is I'll show you here, is I try and get the pad as close to roughly the final position as it's going to be. As you can see, it should be a little bit higher, but it's a little bit low. So I'm going to shift that up, but I'm going to show you how I do that in a minute. So in order to make this easier, what I do is I put the brake together. Now, obviously, if your brakes have been adjusted with the old pads and you've worn the whole way through them, then the cable tension will be way out because it's been tuned in. So I'm going to pop the cable pinch bolt loose. I'm then going to pop that side on there, pull these together till it kind of bites, pull the cable through good and hard, and then just back it off just a little bit, just so I've got some room to move the pad. Because if you pinch it the whole way onto the rim, it will be damn near impossible to actually get the pads to move at all. Now, because you've now done this, oh shit. Because you've now done that, the brake will work. Hee hee, it will work. I just need to dial it up a little bit more. That'll be fine there. Okay, so now the brake works. Ah, that's why, because that wasn't in, right? Now the brake works. Ish. That's going to be a lot better. The way I'm going to do that is I'm going to pull the lever, and when I pull the lever, I'm going to basically use the tension of this to help me adjust and hold it still, because it's very difficult to position the pad and then put enough tension on the lever arm to get it to sit straight. So what I do is I loosen the back nut on the pad until it's loose enough I can move it, and then position it with my fingers, and then I pull the brake so it's holding the pad in position. What this means is I only need one hand then to tighten the pad, like so. And if you have decent pads and a decent rim, then there should be enough friction between them that when you tighten it up, it doesn't really move around too much. I'll usually nip that up, and then I'll hold it like this, thumb at the back of the pad, index finger underneath the pad, like so. Depending on the size of the fork and various other factors, this is more or less difficult. Doing it on the rear brake on a kid's bike is honestly a bit of a nightmare. But that's pretty much it. You will need to do, oh, well, you know what? Let's finish up. We're not far away. I'll loosen this one off. You're going to see a bit of my derriere now, because this is just the position that makes the most sense. I'm going to pull that in. Happy with that. That looks good. Then I'm going to tighten up the kind of the pinch bolt on the pad, whatever you want to call it. That's decent. That's really decent. Pretty happy with that. Now, what you want to do is you obviously want your brake to work as well as it can, because the better it works, the more service life you're going to get out of it. Now I know that there's a decent bit of space between the pads and the rim here, so I'm going to pull the cable through until both of these are touching. Now obviously if I tighten the bolt like this, it's going to rub like crazy. So then I'm just going to give it like 2 or 3 mil. Doesn't need to be a lot because that's obviously going to be split between both sides, so it's going to give me like a millimeter clearance between left and right. And now there is a little bit of rub. And that slipped a little bit, but that's okay. Just undo it, pull it back through, back off a little bit, and pinch it down. Now this is where you're going to need your screwdriver, because you may need to adjust the spring tension of the lever arms. Now, in this case, they're both pretty good because I've done this adjustment quite a few times on it, and it honestly sits pretty solid, and that brake feels really happy. However, let's say, for example, that if you look at the brake, I don't know how well you can see this, but you'll notice that both lever arms move fairly well. Let's give you a close-up. You'll notice that both lever arms move decently well. Let's imagine that one of them, say for example this side, had nowhere near enough tension, right? So when I pull the brake, it's just the left-hand side that's moving. If that's the case, then this side needs enough tension so that it can balance it out. So I would add tension to this side with this little adjustment screw here. Easier said than done with one hand. I would add tension to this adjustment screw here, like so. Can't remember how much I backed it out by, but let's say it was that much. Not quite enough. Need a little bit more. Let's hope that's enough. That's pretty decent. So both arms, as we can see, are moving well. And when we spin, you can hear there's a little bit of a rub, but that's just going to be fine-tuning it. And the wheel might actually be a tiny bit out of true. As opposed to adjusting the brake, I'd probably just loosen it off at this point, just a tiny touch, because it is biting at a point where I'm very happy. Like it could bite another 5 mil further up, and that would be fine. Okay, some finishing touches. Once you have done all that, you're going to want to cut the cable down, because you obviously don't want this trailing around when you're out riding. Now for V-brakes, I normally cut a good bit of cable. I normally pull the cable till it's basically the same length as the lever arm and cut it. Now the reason I do that, generally I would only cut about 3 fingers. I'd cut 3 fingers of length and then do that if it was a gear cable. But it depends on the situation. With V-brakes, usually you get a little tab where you can hide the cable behind there. And I quite like to do that. Keeps it out of the way and it gives you a good bit to play with if you need to make some adjustments down the line. Once you've done that, you will need a bit from the bag of things that people can't agree on what they're called. But I think most people can agree that the part I'm about to put on here is probably called a cable end. I've now found a cable end, and I have my trusty part tool, something levers. Can't remember what the designation is on these. There's a lot of part tool stuff I think is overhyped, but honestly, these cable cutters / crimpers are some of the best I have ever used. I've used the Unior ones, I've used Nipex ones, I've used lots of them. I really, really like the part tool ones. And given the money you spend, I think these are probably about 25, 30 quid for a pair. But I've had these for years, and honestly, they'll probably outlive me. They're amazing. So that's there. That's done. The pads are on. Pads are secured. Cable is replaced. And that is a nice, nippy V-brake. That's how you service a V-brake. There's not a whole lot more to it. There's obviously a lot of practice involved, and it takes a while to get good at it, to be able to do it with speed and efficiency, but really, if you follow that process, minus obviously replacing the housing, which is a fairly simple procedure, I'll go over at some point, that's pretty much it. Enjoy. If you have any questions or feel like I made any major boobs, let me know. I'm sure you will. Till the next time, see you later.